Hi, this is day 4 now, um, or more properly speaking, my 4th video. And yeah, part of the reason I'm in a bathtub is just because it helps to relax me. And I also, kind of with the bathtub series, plan to make them about being vulnerable. So I've just been using these as opportunities to be more exposed, get stuff out, and share any insights that come up too. So yeah, thanks again for following this channel, or if this is your first video watching it, then at least now you know what's going on. And what is coming up for me right now is around self-consciousness and imposter syndrome. Yeah, so I just had a session with a client, and I think overall it went well, but I was definitely really anxious throughout it. And this is someone I have past work experience with, someone I knew, and I think that's probably part of why. But there's also this, I think. So yeah, something that came up during the session for me was that just a feeling of insecurity around being good enough. It wasn't just related to the session itself. Something I've been noticing kind of a lot more lately with like people I know, which is a really good thing, and I'm glad it's happening. But more people seemingly getting over some core issues and problems that they've been having, and like moving forward in life, new things opening up, new opportunities, deeper healing, new insights. And for me, I feel this sense of insecurity around that because I've been trying really hard to heal and grow. I put a lot of time and energy into it, and I feel like I'm still behind a lot of people I know. Some people I know seem like they're still stuck, and seems like they're stuck in a place of like blame and not taking responsibility, and a lot of neediness, like wanting other people to do things for them, but having a really hard time with them doing things for themselves. And I also had to like put up some boundaries. That was a major thing for me last year. Having clear boundaries with people if it felt like it crossed the line for me, if it felt like they were taking too much, if it felt like I was drained, or if it felt like they were disrespecting me. So that happened a lot last year. And it did leave me questioning sometimes, am I going too far with this? Am I looking for things that aren't there? And there might have been some reactivity. And at the same time, I think there also was a pattern of me both attracting and allowing people into my life who wouldn't respect some of my core boundaries. And part of that issue was because I had, for many years, had a hard time putting them up and drawing a line in the sand and saying, you can't cross this. That's not okay. And then when I finally did draw a line in the sand, a lot of them weren't okay with that. And I've been trying to rebuild my connection with one of them. And I think it's, I I don't know, there's potential there. I think I'm just trying to take it very slow, and I'm still on guard around it, and I'm just trying to take it slow. I'm trying to give it another chance, but I'm trying to balance that out with also continuing to try to respect myself. So okay, yeah, to my credit, that's something that I did have to learn how to do, and I finally learned how to do it last year. And it was an issue that I had many years of my life. So yeah, so that was a positive change. I guess in a way I'm still kind of going through it though, because there are like layers to this, you know. With some people, it's really obvious when they're crossing your boundary, and with other people, deep down you know that they're doing it, but they can play it off better. You know, they play it off by playing the victim and making it seem like you'd be selfish if you had those boundaries, or doubling down on being really desperate and that you're their only hope, and that they'll be homeless or destitute or whatever if you don't help them. Like really pulling on your heartstrings. And those can be harder to let go of. Sometimes it's easy, but it's easier when you're at your capacity and it's like you just can't. Like you've helped so many people with intense experiences, and you're just like at your level, and it's like you just need to like care for yourself in that moment. When you're at capacity, then yeah, you just kind of have less patience for that. But you still feel bad about it because you think like maybe I should have had more capacity, maybe I should have been more compassionate. But it tends to be kind of a breaking point, and it can allow for a stepping away. And I guess for me, with a couple people in my life, it's been a bit of a back and forth with that. So I'd reach my limit. I'd be like, dude, I can't do this. Like, I gotta have some boundaries here. Like, this is not working for me. But then they would come back with, like, I really need this, or like this. They would just play the act of. And the hard thing is, it's not fully an act, and I don't think they're even conscious of it. It's just like they're really locked into this view of themselves as being this drowning person who is gonna die if you don't help them. Like they're really kind of stuck in that. And I believe if they would just slow down and just take a step back from themselves and just like, have a more objective view of things, that they would see that there's more that they can do in that situation, or that, no, I'm not their only hope. But when they're stuck in that, you know, they grab onto you, and you're their life raft. But it's also a problem too when, against your own intuition, you let them in and you try to help them, but then they trigger you. And naturally, like, your own shadow comes up. So like with this one person, who I feel acts in a very immature, childish way, doesn't take any responsibility despite the fact that he's, I'll just say, a lot older than I am. Then I notice my own childish, immature side comes out more. Either that or my really critical side. And then that makes me feel bad when I reflect on it. Like, I don't want to be this person. I should be a better person. I shouldn't be so reactive to their reactivity. But, you know, sometimes it's hard to do that when you're in the ball pit with them. Especially when they're staying in your own space. It's a lot harder to do that. because then you're just kind of around it. And I'm not saying it's impossible to be objective about it, but it takes a lot more effort. But it's so easy to get wrapped up in the shame around that I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should be a lot more mature. Why am I not being more mature? All the growth and learning I've done, why is this still coming up? Why am I still giving into this? Why am I still playing these games with them? Because it's like, on an emotional level, metaphorically, it's like, I'm right, no, I'm right, no, I'm right, no, I'm right, no, I'm right. You know, it's this power struggle. That is so difficult to navigate in the moment when it's happening. And if you're living around it, it's a challenge. But see, I'm noticing right now just this thought kicking in, this pattern of like, hey, you set your boundaries up, you took back your space, and you were clear on your line this time. So focus more on that. Don't focus on the past. Okay. But I guess that's why it felt like I wasn't growing as much as I should have, because I'd say my major growth point last year was that I was getting clearer and better with setting up boundaries. It was a messy learning process. It wasn't perfect by any means. There were definitely things I could have done better, but fundamentally, I think I still did the right thing. Really, in all those situations. And I think I would have even a more fine-tuned approach to it that would come off cleaner and simpler, easier for both people in a way. So I guess it felt like with these recent experiences, it made me question if I had even really grown in that way after all, or if it was just like delusional, or if it was just temporary and I just got set back again. So I was feeling frustrated about that. And like I said, today I was able to hold that boundary again and enforce it and not give in to the game. I think I still have more work to do about why I get reactive about that in the first place. I mean, on the surface level, it's obvious. It's because I'm being triggered. It's because I'm feeling disrespected, or I'm feeling like my capacity is being overburdened. It's like with this situation, it felt like in a lot of ways like I was already at capacity and was trying to do a lot of emotional work on myself. I feel like the focus really needed to be on my own self-healing, and I needed that space. But I took them in anyways because I felt bad. And I listened to the belief that there was no other option for them. And I thought, oh, that would make me a bad person if I didn't do this. So it was like I was overstrained, and with this particular person, it's not, and I know this, and in retrospect, I think I can understand it more clearly now. But intuitively, I knew this, that when I help them, it's not just helping them. Like, if I let them into my space, it's not just letting them into my space. They have a lot of needs, and it's de facto kind of becoming their part-time caregiver. So it's not just signing up to shelter them, it's about doing other things too. Kind of like being an errand boy and being like a part-time counselor and it's just, there's more involved in it. So it's signing up for a lot. And like I said, I just did not have capacity for it. If it had really legitimately been just sheltering someone temporarily and kind of like they do their thing, I do my thing, I think it would have been fine. Especially if we were kind of on the same wavelength. But this was not that situation. What it did teach me, though, is that I still have a need for affection and connection. And even though I have been in a inner focus of working on myself and trying to heal, that and thinking that I had to kind of go in with this like romanticized belief that I have to be the hermit, I have to like go into my cave, get to the bottom of all my issues, and then come out afterwards. And I think this situation kind of just clarified that that's not really the case for me, at least not right now. Yes, there's a need for that inner work, but there's also a need for connection and being around other people. And in a certain way, even though it was stressful, there was a part of me that also liked having someone around. I didn't like the circumstance, but it just kind of primally liked having someone else around. So I think I needed to be aware of that need. That I miss having someone around. And friends are nice, and then there is a need for more connection. I think that's valid. So I need to I think get out more. And there's an even deeper need there that I think I'm just kind of sad living by myself. And I really want it to be a good situation, like if I was to live with someone else. Like we really have to be on the same wavelength. But yeah, I just kind of miss it. And the main issue I had in the past of having roommates was mostly because it felt like we weren't on the same page. So yeah, I just missed that connection. And it's kind of nice to like it sounds funny. I don't know. I just think it's funny saying this. It's kind of nice to like when you go to bed to know that there's someone else there. I don't know. It just feels kind of nice. So yeah. I don't know where that leads me. There's no one I can think of in this moment that I don't know. I don't see a situation in this moment of someone moving in with me that where it would meet both of our needs. I don't know. There are some possibilities, but there's that question too of like, do I stay here in this apartment? Do I move? There are a few things tied in with that, so I think I just need to process that a little bit more. So during this session, that was something that came up for me, because it felt like this person, even though they're looking for support with like a specific area of their life, it seemed like overall in their whole life, like despite everything that they'd been going through, that they were just kind of shining. Like they had this light about them. They had this deep insight, and it just was really cool for me to see that, and it made me feel. I was happy for them, but it also made me feel kind of sad about myself, and like I was saying earlier, just like feeling like I've been putting in so much work and like into myself, and that fundamentally I still feel like I'm in the same spot. But talking it out like this is helping me also realize that that's not really true. One of my key challenges, which was with boundaries, is something I worked on a lot last year. And though I'm still learning, I am learning. So I think I need to give myself credit for that. But going a little bit deeper into that too is feels like a more fundamental feeling I have about myself. I've been really working on shame, letting shame go. And I think it's helped a bit. I think the top layers of that have been shed, but there seem to be a lot of layers there, and it feels like I'm still holding on to a lot of stuff, especially from my past. And I feel like I've been doing a lot of work to try to let that past go. Maybe it's not enough, but I mean, I'm not giving up, but so this is what's coming up right now. I think this is part of the problem. I guess a little bit of a content warning here, because this gets into some really weird stuff for some people. So I'll just say that. There's a lot to unpack here, but I'll start with this. A few years ago, I got involved in what's called non-duality, and had read this book called Spiritual Enlightenment, The Damnedest Thing by Jed McKenna. Now, I've been involved interested in spirituality most of my life, since I was a kid, and I've studied things like Wicca and Christian mysticism and Kabbalah and like a bunch of different stuff. Not like I went into the greatest depth with any of those, but I explored a lot of things, and when you get involved in spirituality, at a certain point, you kind of wonder, where does this lead? What's the summum bonum of this? What's the end result? What am I going towards? And usually, from what I've seen, people kind of come to one of two conclusions. The first conclusion that I think most people come to first is Well, the end result of this is something like enlightenment. And people might hear that word tossed around, and they might think of like some kind of guru or Buddha or person in the Himalayas meditating all day, and have like an image in their mind that someone who's enlightened is someone who does a lot of spiritual work. And I think people come to this conclusion too because in other areas of our lives, it seems to be the case that the more you study and practice something, the better you get at it, and that a master of any field is someone who's worked really hard in it and studied a lot and practiced a lot. You know, it's like that 10,000 hours rule by Malcolm Gladwell, that when you have put 10,000 hours into something, that's when you cross the threshold of expert. So a lot of us have this kind of in our mind already. And then when we enter the spiritual field, I think we just either consciously or subconsciously apply that same principle to that and just think, well, the more I study this and practice this and work hard at it, the better I'll get. And it's natural for us to look for people who seem to be masters, quote unquote. And usually we attach the word enlightenment to people like that. And we just imagine that enlightenment is someone who's just worked harder than anyone else in spirituality. And then some of us, we might use other words. We might get weirded out by the idea of enlightenment. Or we might think it's, not possible or a fantasy. And then we'll just, we'll use other words instead. Or we'll like take it down a notch, but it's still kind of the same thing. Like some people will say ascension or apotheosis or leaving the 3D, going into the 5D, things like that. Raising your frequency. So we'll just like use other words, but we're essentially saying the same thing. We're just sugarcoating it. And then a third factor in that is that enlightenment kind of ends up being the thing that we project all of what we want onto. Most of us want to be happy. We want love and to be loved. We want to feel connection. We want to feel peace. And we want to feel like things are going right in our lives. We want to feel like our needs are met. So pretty much all of us want these things. And we just project those onto this idea of enlightenment as that's the ultimate fulfillment of those. We want to feel connection. Well, enlightenment is connection to everything, or it's oneness with everything. We want to feel love and to be loved. Oh, well, enlightenment is the ultimate love. It's complete unconditional love. That's there all the time. We want to feel freedom. Oh, enlightenment is the ultimate freedom. It's liberation. It's liberation from all suffering. It's liberation from unhappiness. It's liberation from all worldly problems. Or we'll think we want our needs met. Oh, enlightenment is the ultimate meeting of our needs. It meets it so perfectly that we don't have any needs anymore. No desire. Or some of us will amend that and say, oh, it's the fulfillment of our deepest desires, of our truest desires. Or it's instant manifestation. Whatever we want and need, it just happens effortlessly. Most of us want happiness. Oh, enlightenment is the ultimate happiness. It's when you're happy all the time, unfazed by life. So we just project all these things onto enlightenment. It just becomes mythological in proportion, and then we attach it to these quote unquote masters who we imagine have worked harder than anyone else in the spiritual field. And we think like, oh, well, a doctor who's studied harder than anyone else and worked harder than anyone else, he's going to be the best doctor in town, or maybe even the best doctor in the nation or the world. Well, if enlightenment is all of these ultimate things that I want, it's the ultimate realization of those things. And enlightenment seems to be where spirituality goes, or substitute enlightenment for whatever, salvation, ascension, whatever. Then it stands to reason that those people who have worked the hardest in it are the ones who are enlightened. So that must mean that's what I have to do too. So this is the paradigm a lot of us adopt when we enter spirituality. And I think that's the first belief we get sucked into as we're on the spiritual path. But then there's a second option that I see some people take, and I think it usually happens after the first one, which is there is no destination. And it sounds so cheesy and cliche, and I think that's like the interior resistance to it, because we all have heard it. Well, if we've been involved in the spiritual path a lot, we've all heard it. But most of us don't actually believe it. We just think it's a nice idea and we want to believe it. Or, we'll smile about it, but there's internal resistance where it just doesn't land. So it becomes a platitude. But yeah, this realization that, well, the journey is the destination. There is no real destination. There is no end point. There's not really anything to get to. It's just about this right now. It's about the now. It's about the moment. It's about being present. And I think that's actually a more mature standpoint. And maybe it takes some work to be able to accept that. Maybe we have to go through that initial phase of like reaching for some carrot at the end to motivate us to do the work. And then once we've done some of that work, some of the healing, some of the meditation, some of the mindfulness practices, all those things. And also maybe once we wear ourselves out, we do kind of come to this conclusion like, oh, maybe there actually is no carrot. Maybe where I am right now already is it. And I just have to get comfortable here. I just gotta, spread out a little bit in here, and realize that I'm not really getting anywhere. Of course, there's this third option that can happen, which is nihilism. And that's where you, obviously you just think that it's not worth it then. Oh, well, so if there's nowhere to really get to, and or if there's no, I wonder if there's a connection there. If there's nowhere to get to point A, and then the conclusion nihilists usually come to is there's no meaning, point B, I wonder if there's a connection between those two things. Maybe I'll come back to that, circle back. But I do think a nihilist, I gotta think about this. So yeah, this third option, so what we were saying, the metaphor we were using, first, you have this carrot on your path that you're going after. You do all this work, do these practices or study, whatever, to get there. And then eventually you might wear yourself out. Maybe some of the work that you've done has actually, helped you. Maybe you've healed some. Maybe you've meditated and been able to drop more into presence. maybe you let go of some of your attachments. And then you just come to a place where it's like, oh, there's no carrot, so I'm just gonna rest here. I'm just gonna be here now. But what can also happen too, I think, is if you get stuck, I think it's almost like if you get stuck in a contradiction. It's like part of you seems to realize that there's no carrot. But something also just can't accept that you can just be here and not have to chase a carrot. That in a way, the carrot's already here. It's like, I think there's a limbo state. And I think that could lead to nihilism. I don't think that's the only way to get to nihilism, but I think that's one of them. I think if you're on the spiritual path, I think you can easily fall into nihilism if you get stuck there. And that's where I got stuck, kind of. So interestingly for me, this is how it played out. I come across Jed McKenna's book. He's talking about enlightenment. And what he's doing, which really blew me away, is he is debunking a lot of the myths about enlightenment. And he is kind of chopping down statues, guru statues, and saying, all those people that you thought were enlightened really aren't, most likely. And what enlightenment really is not what anybody really expects it to be. And the biggest thing I took away from that, the biggest blowout to me was, well, two things. One, him saying that enlightenment is real and it is achievable in this lifetime. Not only that, it's achievable within 2 years or less, if you really put in the work for it. Because a lot of the myth too is that enlightenment doesn't happen for most people. It happens for kind of a special few people who do a lot of the work, but it happens over lifetimes of work. And to not expect that it's going to happen for you in this lifetime necessarily, but to put in the work anyways, because it could happen in a future lifetime. And then what I said earlier about, connecting enlightenment with mastery. But what he says is, no, it's achievable for anyone with a sincere desire for it, who honestly wants it. And he says, actually, the first thing to do is to first figure out if it's what you actually want. Because he says most people don't really want it. They think they do because they're projecting all this stuff onto it. That it's like ultimate happiness or ultimate love or whatever. But he says all of that stuff is just, it's mental projection. It's not reality. It has nothing to do with enlightenment. So people have to first figure out what it is that they really want. And for him, the way he frames it is enlightenment comes with a sincere desire for truth, for ultimate truth. And he actually calls enlightenment untruth, unrealization. He says that's the more accurate term for it. So essentially, you just have to figure out first, is the thing that I want above anything else, the number one thing that is most important to me, that I will give anything for? Is it truth? And according to him, if it's not, then this is probably not the path for you, at least not right now. Go do something else, figure out what it is you really want, and then pursue that. He's kind of nice about when he says that. He also says that, well, if you do really figure out what you really want, chances are it's going to be easier for you to obtain it. The universe will meet you where you are, and it will create a path for you, and you'll have an easier time if you can clarify that. Whereas if you don't, you might have more resistance and have more struggle. So that was a key takeaway I took from that. But another thing he said is, so he's speaking from almost a narrative standpoint throughout this book. It's not really laid out as like a teaching book per se. It's kind of laid out almost like a novel. Well, not even a novel. It's laid out like a memoir, really. And when you read it, it feels like you're kind of walking through his life, and you're getting a sense of what that's like, kind of. And in some ways, it comes across as very ordinary, as like nothing special. And at other points, it comes across as like really kind of mind-bending. But nowhere in it struck me, does he particularly come across as the stereotype of someone who's enlightened or like a guru. I mean, in some ways, yes. But in other ways, I guess some of the parts that stuck with me the most is how the ways he described his life, his experience, as being very simple, as not being in perpetual bliss, as just playing video games, having a conversation, going skydiving, enjoying a good meal. Those are actually some of the most powerful moments of his books. He has 3 main books, and that comes through very clearly in all 3 of his books. The way he talks about it, just like, I mean, it's obvious that he puts a value and an emphasis on truth, but it's not in a way that makes it seem like it's otherworldly. Sometimes it kind of does, but I'll get to that later. But some of the most powerful moments in this book really are just about enjoying the simplicity of life. And you can feel like the appreciation he has for that. Things that we just take for granted, like a sunset, or sharing a meal with someone. There's a preciousness there that just comes through. And I know there are a lot of criticisms about his work, but I think that's one of the things that a lot of people miss. And that feels really authentic for me. Whether or not the other stuff is, that is a powerful message that I think he illustrates clearer than actually a lot of authors out there. Not saying there aren't authors who do that, but I don't know. I guess there's just something about reading it that sparked something for me with that. But I had a hard time accepting that part of it at first. And I think I still kind of am struggling with it. But for me, of course, even though that hit too, you get this shockwave. Because then he goes into what feels like the big one, which is that when he's really explaining enlightenment, is that there is no self, that you don't exist. It's not just that this is Maya, that this is an illusion. It's not solipsism, which says that you're the only thing that exists. It's that all of this is an illusion, including you. And actually, even more fundamentally, what you take yourself to be as this ghost in the machine, as this thing behind the eyes that controls your body and thoughts, that's not real. That's a delusion. That doesn't exist. And his emphasis in his work is about hacking away at the layers of delusion until you fully, completely see that. And he says when you do fully, completely see that, it's permanent. It's just, the mirror's broken, the glass is broken, and it's not coming back together. But the beautiful thing is that, I mean, there's obviously a fear that comes up, at least for me, for me and from other people I've heard. There can be a fear reaction or insecurity around that, well, but how would you function? But what about this? What about that? But when you read this book, and again, it's like a memoir, if anything, the feeling that comes off is that he has his shit together more than most people. He's not worried about the future. He's not stuck in the past. He's just here. He meets people in the moment. He meets needs as they arise in the moment. And it's just this fluid thing. And he has some excitement here, and then some very ordinary things here. And it's not, in a lot of ways, it's just like a normal life, aside from him being like a spiritual teacher or guide, which is very normal. And doesn't seem like he's emotionally overreactive. Doesn't seem like he gives a shit about a lot of the stuff that most people seem to care about too much. It's simple. It's a simple life. So the sense I got from that is he actually functions better than the majority of people out there. Yeah. Which I think on some level was part of the attraction for me too, with enlightenment. But the kicker there is that he really hits home that there is no self. Now, I'd studied Buddhism before, and you hear about this idea, anatta, no self. And when I first heard the idea, I rejected it. And I thought, well, this other idea, the Atman and the Brahman in Hinduism, that feels more attractive to me. Or it makes more sense to me that everything is one, everything's connected, and that I'm part of that. And I think a layer of that too is in our culture, in the American, westernized culture. There is, a lot of individualism and a lot of emphasis placed on the importance of being an individual, of being your own person, being independent, achieving your goals, being accomplished and successful. Being unique, standing out. And there's a lot of emphasis placed on that, and that carries through strongly in the spirituality too, because a lot of that spirituality caters to that, to making you more special, to making you a better individual. Even if you're more connected or feeling more at one with things, there's still this kind of like belief attached to that you can have those experiences, but you're still the individual, but you're just a better individual in a way. And it just felt like this book debunked that. For me, at least. And then all of a sudden, it just didn't seem like that stuff was as important anymore. It's like the carrot I had been chasing this whole time. Which, to be honest, I'd only been chasing half-heartedly. I'd only been chasing half-heartedly. I think that's a whole other thing to unpack, maybe a separate video. But this is something that just really hit for me. And I remember as a kid, I don't remember how young, but I had this interesting moment of restless thought, or I don't know, just this energy came over me, and I guess it was kind of a frustration mixed with curiosity. And I asked myself a lot of questions rapidly, kind of just one after another, just boom, boom, boom. Like, why are we here? Why this? Why human being? Why this form? Why human being? Why this planet? Why this solar system? Why this reality? When this could be anything. This could be absolutely anything. Why this specifically? And I wasn't looking for like an answer to those questions. It was just this pent up, frustrated, maybe that's not quite the right word, but pent up, kind of frustrated, confused, insanely curious energy. Really this big what the fuck energy. Like, why all this? This could be anything. Why this? And it's just like, why? And then there was just I don't even remember exactly. There was just a space. There was just like a blip, and a surrealness, strangeness. I don't know. The questioning itself actually came from a sense of the strangeness of this reality. And the rapid questions were just like pinpointing more and more and more of that strangeness, that feeling of strangeness, which I think a lot of us gloss over, or we think about or know about, but we just kind of just try to just, set aside. Or I don't know, I don't know. We all have different relationships to it, but I just was just like, no, what the fuck? And I guess I just wanted to go all into that strangeness and just get to the bottom of it. And then it just blipped out. And then the easiest way I can say it is just for a second there was like, I don't know, no need. And then, of course, everything comes back. All the thoughts come back. The reality settles back in, sort of. And you're like, what was that? What just, and then you're left confused. And then, but I mean, but there's also like the sense like, oh, I can't really do that again. Just felt like a passing moment. So yeah, so Jed McKenna, he was talking about no self, which in Buddhism is called anatta. And for some reason, even though for years I'd heard about it but just rejected it, it just never landed. It didn't just, it was just falls off. Um, Something about it hit this time. Something hooked onto me, or it felt like it did. And I don't know, I just got the sense that what he's talking about is true. And I'd had debates with myself before about this, about anatta versus atman, and no self versus big self. And I've been really confused about it and really, really tried to reconcile those things. But in the end, I still leaned towards big self. And I don't think I really wanted to go to the no self. But for some reason, it just kind of hit this time. Something, even if it was just like a little thing, little hook, something caught. And then shortly after that, I had my first Bufo experience where everything felt like an illusion. There was just the sense, there was just the knowingness, everything is an illusion. And with my Bufo experience, there was no hallucination or anything. It was just, I was just here. There was just reality. There wasn't any like significant shift in perception. It was just the knowingness that, oh, this is all an illusion. And then it just felt like complete freedom. And I just felt like great in my body. I just felt, I ran through the desert and just had a good old time. Just felt freeing. I guess there was still a sense of a me, though. There was still an identity. But yeah, everything else felt like an illusion. And it just felt incredibly freeing. And it didn't feel like it disconnected me from anything in any way. It didn't feel like it created like a disassociation. None of that. It just felt like, if anything, I felt more alive, and I felt more physical and active and energetic and more loving. And the people who were with me, like, I ended up giving them all this big hug and like kissing them on the cheek and telling them I love them, and it was just, yeah, if anything, it just felt more alive and intimate. Yeah, and it was very hard for me to come out of that. I felt angry coming out of that. And I'd had some similar experiences in the past, but not quite to that extent. Similar, but I'd had glimpses. So I knew that, and it seemed like each glimpse I had would just kind of, I don't know if it would deepen. I want to say deepen or expand or get even closer to the possible truth. I don't know for sure, but it would feel like Yeah, I don't know. It just over time, more and more, it felt like I was more and more convinced that this really is an illusion and it's not at all what we take it to be. So I guess that was the right timing too for this book. Um, and prior to that, I had still been doing a lot of the spiritual work around like trying to change my state and manifest things and all that. Um, and some healing work too. But I think on some fundamental level, I was also getting exhausted with that. Or it felt like, okay, I know I can kind of do this, but it just doesn't ring for me anymore. I don't know. And I think I'd always had that issue, but I think just got to be more and more the case. And just felt like, I don't know, like it wasn't enough, I guess. So yeah, so that book hits me, then Bufo hits me. And then I really just take the nosedive into non-duality. And I start looking up videos on YouTube about it and finding different teachers and speakers about it. And I start reading more books about it from other authors and just going a lot deeper into it. Yeah, and then of course some teachers seem to have contradictory messages, but at least it felt like, okay, I guess the one thing that they seem to agree on is that there's no self and that this is an illusion. Okay, at least I've passed that threshold of standard for teachers. I don't know. It just felt like I didn't want to hear anymore from spiritual teachers who were still talking about like the big self or talking about like just improving yourself, being a better person. Not that I didn't want to still do those things, but I just kind of felt tired of that at that point, or just didn't want to. I don't know. Once Jed McKenna hit, and then I had that experience, it just was like, I don't really want to go down those other rabbit holes anymore. This is the one thing I want to focus on now. And that's tricky. Because it also felt like something lit up and it just, if there was anything I could focus on and just get rid of everything else, I knew that was it. But there was still something that just didn't quite feel right, and I don't know why. There was still something that was like, something holding me back or pulling me back. I don't know. As much as I got fired up about it and could just watch video after video after video and just devour books on it and just experiment with these different practices like self-inquiry and stuff. Well, that was really it. So the challenge for me, and logically what eventually, how do I say this? It hit an intuitive hook for me, I think, but it also hit an intellectual hook at that point. Because by that time I had come to accept that, well, at least come to believe that everything is one. And for some reason, it doesn't seem like that, but believing that there must be a way to realize that oneness But still believing that fundamentally reality was one. And I, studied a bit of David Bohm and his implicate order theory and holographic theory that Michael Talbot talks about, which he borrows from Bohm. But and then Rupert Sheldrake with morphic resonance. I've been trying to find scientific theories that could validate this thing that I felt and things that I had already had glimpses into, which makes me sound special, doesn't it? But this was a belief that I had, and it so Jed McKenna wasn't the first. What am I saying here? I don't remember if I heard this first from Jim Newman, who says this is like his primary message, or if this thought had come up before that. Jed McKenna alludes to it, but he doesn't say it as directly as Jim Newman does or other people do. But the thought that made logical sense for me is that this is already it. This is already unequivocally, absolutely it. This is already what is sought. This is already it. And there was an intellectual hook that had for me of, well, of course, that makes absolute sense. If it's true that reality is one, everything is one, well, what's this? What's this right now? What's this? Is this somehow not that? That makes no sense. If it's true that everything is one, and it would have to be the case that has always been, or that's just not something that stops to be. Although there are elaborate theories like Kabbalistic tree of life that talks about separation, how that happens, even though everything is somehow still one. I know a bunch of elaborate theories in metaphysics for explaining that. But fundamentally, I thought it was all bullshit. Fundamentally, I just thought those are all just rationalizations to resist something about this right now. And maybe that was a rebellious spirit in me, I don't know. But it made sense to me, logically, that if it's true that everything is one, then this has to be it. There can't be two separate realities. There can't be this and then another reality that is somehow different from this, whether it's a reality that's in a different time, like the future, like a future state you can be in, or whether it's a reality of a different space, like a higher dimension that you have to enter. None of those make sense, because those fundamentally imply separation. Those fundamentally imply more than one reality. Whether it's in space or time, it doesn't matter. So if everything is one, then it has to be this. It can't be anything other than this. There can be no reality outside of this. And it's not this in some mysterious way of like a special this or the now. It's just what's already happening. It's just, I mean, I could say this body, this bathtub tub, bathroom, towel, toilet paper. You know, I could say all of those things, but something that I learned from Peter Brown is that those are all just conceptual labels for something that's happening. That's the brain dividing things up, categorizing, naming a color, naming a pattern, naming a shape, naming this, that, an object, even the body, even the self, even the thing that we think is behind the eyes that's seeing out, even the thing that we think is the doer that's moving a hand, you know, whatever. They're all just conceptualizations. And all of that is just mental stuff. It's just mental stuff. It's not fundamentally real. So by this, I'm not saying the sink, the water, whatever, even this body, it's just this, that, yeah, it's just this. And even the naming of those things, the mental stuff is included in that, because there's no exclusion. But what is the mental stuff when there's not more mental stuff referencing the mental stuff? What is that? That's this, in theory. And now I can say all this and it doesn't mean anything because it's not, because there still seems to be the experience of separation. There still seems to be this thing behind the eyes looking out and talking to this phone, this camera. There still seems to be this body that is separate, you know, that is, you know, there still seems to be separation. There still seems to be an I. All that is apparently still happening. So that doesn't make sense. And I totally get why people will be turned off by this or think it's bogus and just be like, you know, this is a bunch of bullshit. Like, even spiritual people who will be turned away by this and be like, well, that's kind of true, but not really. You know, there are still dimensions, you know, there's still a self. It's just about getting into the big self. It's just about getting into the higher self. It's, you know, so I totally understand why people would have resistance to this. And I'll be honest, I think it's easier that way. Because if you're kind of, for me, it feels like in this stuck place of like, something about this message just really pulls on you. But at the same time, it's like you're also dragging back. It's like, it's hard to describe. The best way I've been able to describe it is it's like driving with, it's like you're in a car, you turn it on and you have your gas on the, you have your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time. It's the best metaphor I think I could give for this feeling. And it's a really just kind of, it feels like a fucked up feeling. But I mean, I'm not even trying to say it's a bad thing. It's just, that's what's happening. And, honestly, if someone was just, if this message just fell off them and they're just like, you know what, that sounds great and all, but you know, that doesn't interest me. I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna work on I don't know. I'm gonna work on healing my inner child. I'm going to so many spiritual paths out there, you know. I'm gonna commune with my holy guardian angel. I'm going to raise my kundalini. If that's what someone really wants to do and they're clearing it, honestly, I think that's like, in a way, I almost envy them, because at least with those things, you can have clear, measurable goals, or you can have like daily habits you work on, and you have a carrot to move towards. You have benchmarks, and you can feel a sense of satisfaction after you go past that honeymoon phase, and then the depressed stage after that of the plateau. If you can get past that, then you can get into this sort of satisfactory flow and just be like, just feeling good about the progress you're making, and just, I'm kind of speaking as an outsider of that, so I don't know if I'm describing that well, but to me, it just feels like it'd be ultimately easier. Because you have all this seeking energy, but hey, you're applying it to something that you're getting results out of. And you're getting more results the more you do it, and more results the more you do that. So you can feel good about yourself. And yeah, it creates an image, a self-image. It reinforces an identity, but you're moving towards something. And you're growing, and you're learning, and you're expanding. And that can feel really good. But for me, it feels like that's not really an option. And it's like I have to kind of force myself to try to see it as an option. I have to, like, even though I know the carrot's not really there, I have to pretend like it's there. That's the place I'm in right now. And it's weird. But I'm trying, because I still feel like there are areas that I need to grow in and areas that I need to heal. Goals that I still want to achieve. So I don't know, maybe I do still believe in the carrot. But I mean, I guess I do in a way, because also I ended up substituting the carrot for this version of enlightenment, which is just the non-dual enlightenment. And I just started seeing the no self as the carrot. But it's a really weird place to be in. When you also think about it, it's like, and then you also hear this message from people that also hits you, like when I hear Jim Newman talk about this. Yeah, if everything is one, that's already the case, then there's already no separation. And that means that this is included in that this is that. And in fact, this cannot not be that. Yet to still seemingly experience separation. It's weird. And I guess I haven't, obviously I haven't had the full realization. But I've had enough glimpses to know that that's not just a joke, that it's not just a lie someone made up. And maybe I can't even know that for sure, because now it's just a memory. It's not happening right now. It's just a memory. But it leaves me with this feeling that it is true It leaves me with this feeling. And then there's a strangeness with just the fact that this is still happening. The separation seems to still be happening. But why is that a problem? I guess, why is that a problem? Is that really a problem? Am I making it a problem? Maybe that's the weird thing too. That's the strangeness too. Maybe it's not a problem. It's like I want to think my way out of this. I guess it's because I'm thinking out loud here. I guess it's because when you're doing a practice, it feels like effort. Okay, for me, when I'm doing a practice, when I'm meditating or trying to do inquiry or whatever, there's a distinct effort feeling that comes with that. And also what comes with that is the distinct doer feeling, is the distinct I feeling. I know this isn't going to make sense the way I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say it anyways. But I want to release that sense of I, which is just another way of me saying I want to release the sense of separation. So when Jim Newman talks about he doesn't say you have to. Sorry, my mind is a little. When Jim Newman talks about there's nothing that can be done for this to be realized or seen, which he's also not saying there's nothing. He's not making any suggestion as to what to do or not to do. He's just stating, I guess you could say, a fact of reality, that he's just saying this is already it, and no action can make this more it, in a way. He's saying that. And in a way, he's also saying the illusion, the separation just falls away on its own. But at least I think that's what he's saying. But and I know this must sound like crazy talk to some people who aren't used to this kind of conversation. But I mean, this is what, if you get to hardcore Buddhism, this is what it's really about. This is anatta. This is what we're really talking about. So, yeah. This isn't new. But so the practice feels effortful. And something in me doesn't want to do it, even though there's this drive to do something. And so that's why I guess maybe it's not that I want to think my way through it, but it just feels like thought is more of an ethereal thing. For me, it feels less effortful to think. And it's not even quite that, but there's a belief there that I should just be able to get it if this is already the case. And that comes as like an insight, like a flash, a realization, and my hand is going to my head. So I guess subconsciously that means like somehow there's an association I have with realization and the mind. which is just another word for self. And that's the contradiction there, I guess. I don't fucking know. I don't fucking know what I'm talking about. So there's this expectation that it's going to happen here. It's like, boom, epiphany. Oh, there's an expectation of that. And if I'm being perfectly honest, all of the glimpses I've had, except maybe one, but I think probably all of them, even, sense that everything's an illusion. But it's so hard to, dissect this as memory. But I think they all had this going on. They all had this going on. Except maybe one of them very briefly didn't. But the rest did. Yeah, one of them very briefly didn't, and it was just me staring at a lamp. And I was doing an inquiry around inner versus outer. Just kind of inquiring into what is the inner and what is the outer. Where's the dividing line there? And then there was just I felt this heat coming off my body, and like my hands started sweating a lot. And then it was just like there was no me. It was just, there's the lamp and there's the environment in the body, and the heat was still happening, but there was no me. There was just the environment. And I feel like I'm lying saying this. I think because it just feels so much like it's not the case right now. And I can't the feeling does not come back up from memory with this particular thing. It just doesn't, it's not like the experience gets recreated when I bring it up. It's not like that. So it feels weird going back into that and like, did that really happen? It did happen. And for a second, there was no me. And, but then it all comes back. And, yeah, that's the strangeness of it. It's the real strangeness of it, because this can never not be the case. It's the paradox of it. It's like, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, that's what an illusion is, though, it seems convincing. It's not inherently real, but it seems convincing. And, I can say that, well, I guess that it just means that I'm in the illusion right now. Just that the illusion of a separate self is appearing right now. That's just what's happening. Yeah, I can say that. It doesn't mean anything when I say it. It doesn't mean shit. Oh. Yeah. So, I mean, that's just where I'm at. Sorry, I'm just like, my back's hurting a bit. I'm just stretching a bit. So, yeah, I mean, where I'm at, I have some support again. I have some more structured support again with this from a teacher, a guide, and yeah, I'm just gonna try to do the practices again and just see what happens. There's frustration, I think, still with that. And in a way, too, there's the frustration with, this is maybe me projecting old ideas of a Christian God onto this whole thing, but this idea that, well, I've been praying to the all, whatever this is. I've been praying to this, to infinity, the all, and asking it to release the illusion of separation, and just thinking that it should be that easy. And there's almost like an indignancy of like, why should there be any work needed behind that? Why should, if this is like true nature, if this is the natural way, if this is the natural way, if this is just ultimate simplicity, it doesn't make sense to me why there should be any like striving towards it. If it's like, it's just already here, it's just, that doesn't make any sense to me. There's frustration with that, but it's happening, and you know what? If it's happening, it's happening. If it's happening, it's happening. If there's striving, if there's frustration, whatever. And maybe mixed in that too a bit is a sense of unworthiness and feeling like God is judging me, or God deems me unworthy of this realization. So God, it is holding this back from me. So there's a bit of that in there. There's a bit of that in there, yeah, for sure. Ooh. It's an interesting stew. So yeah, I was talking about nihilism earlier, and this can easily devolve into that. I was talking about the limbo state of when you start to realize that there's no carrot. you either start to realize that there is no carrot, or it doesn't make sense to chase a carrot. But you haven't quite accepted the present. You haven't quite accepted things as they already are. So you're in limbo. So you start feeling like things are meaningless, or things aren't worth it. You start questioning your goals and feeling less motivated to work towards them. You get kind of stuck and lost. And more often than not, you just end up regressing to hedonistic pleasure to just kind of get through life. Because then you start thinking, well, like, what's the point of living? And if you're not suicidal, then you just kind of just find kind of whatever you can to keep. You no longer have a big carrot at the end, but now you just kind of look for like small carrots right in front of you. Getting laid, getting high, drinking. And, sometimes too, having a good meal, meeting up with friends, going for a walk in the park, going for a hike. So it can be interlaced with those things too. And I think the healthier side of it ends up leaning more and more towards that, towards I think some of the things that are fundamental to human happiness just leans more towards that, leans more towards human connection and appreciating the simple things in life, and appreciating nature, appreciating the body, and appreciating being human. And then I think that ends up becoming, the healthy expression of existentialism versus nihilism and often addiction. Or a hamster wheel of hedonism that just doesn't not hedonism out of an appreciation for life, but hedonism out of sort of a desperation to try to keep living. There's a big difference. And you know what? I've been in that. So I'm not saying that's really a bad thing. It's not something I want to stay in a long time, and it's not something that I hope others stay in for a long time. But I think that can be just as much a part of life as anything else. It's not inherently bad. It's a phase, and it's understandable. And honestly, sometimes you get into that dark place or that limbo space, and you just need to find something to hold on to. And if it's getting laid, if it's getting high, fuck it. But I think it just becomes a problem when you hold on to it for too long. Because I think the natural progression from there would be more into that appreciation of life journey. And with both of them, again, they've both dropped the carrot at the end of the road. So yeah, they've gone through that same shift, but whereas the nihilist can't accept the here and now, and you could even say that can't really accept the beauty in life and the beauty of being a human being and being alive, the existentialist can. And these are just words. I'm not saying you have to be an existentialist to get that. I'm giving examples here, but for the other person who does appreciate life, it's a different experience. And that's how they can, I guess, kind of wind their way back into. So I said there are, 3 options that happen when you're on the spiritual path. And I think maybe in a way, any path in general, it's not just spiritual. But 1, you chase the carrot. 2, you drop the carrot and you just appreciate the now. And the now becomes the carrot in a way. Or 3, you kind of drop the carrot, but you resist the now, and so you're in limbo. And so I think that's the way where you can kind of wind your way back, or you can wind your way into number 2, into this second way. And just start appreciating life more and finding pleasure in the simple things and finding pleasure and joy in human connection. Yeah. Things like that. And that necessarily comes with an acceptance for pain and the things that can go wrong in life too. Because what I found is that you can't really accept one without the other. Well, you can't really appreciate being alive fully without accepting that, accepting the pain too. Okay, I only have 5% left on my battery, so I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much for listening. I did not know I would go in this direction, but yeah, that's just what came out. And if this sparks any interest in non-duality, I recommend looking for a teacher. There are a lot of good ones out there. Or it's, just a book or a message. Jim Newman, he doesn't call himself a teacher, but there's him on YouTube. There's Angelo DiLullo. There's Paul Hedderman. A lot of people out there. Just, if you're interested, find the person who resonates for you and trust your intuition. But thank you for listening to this. And if you like my content, you want to see more, please subscribe. All right, have a great night or day, whatever.